The morning sun rose reluctantly over Harveston, its golden light barely cutting through the heavy gloom that had settled on the town. Nathaniel Briggs's absence didn't go unnoticed. When his patrol truck was found abandoned near the edge of the cornfield, whispers spread like wildfire. Locals, already superstitious about the cornfields, began murmuring about the curse. Ethan Walker and Ryan Carter, two college students home for the summer, were intrigued by the growing mystery. Harveston was a sleepy town where the biggest event of the year was the county fair, and any break from the monotony was welcomed. Ethan, a budding journalist with a knack for solving puzzles, saw it as a story worth chasing. Ryan, on the other hand, preferred to steer clear of trouble but couldn't let Ethan go alone. "Come on, Ryan," Ethan said, his voice tinged with excitement. "This is exactly the kind of thing we need to shake things up around here. Besides, it's probably just some wild animal." Ryan sighed, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. "Wild animal or not, people are saying there's something out there. Something unnatural." Ethan smirked. "Unnatural? Are we in a horror movie now?" Despite his reluctance, Ryan followed Ethan to the cornfields that evening. The air felt heavier as they approached, the tall stalks rustling as if whispering secrets. Ethan carried a flashlight and his trusty notebook, while Ryan gripped an old baseball bat. They entered the maze of corn, the towering stalks closing around them like the walls of a labyrinth. The world outside faded, replaced by an eerie silence punctuated only by their footsteps and the occasional chirp of crickets. "See? Nothing but corn and crickets," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. As if on cue, a low growl echoed from somewhere deep within the field. Ethan stopped, his heart skipping a beat. Ryan tightened his grip on the bat. "What the hell was that?" Ryan hissed. Ethan raised his flashlight, its beams slicing through the darkness. The growl came again, louder this time, followed by the unmistakable sound of rustling corn. "Maybe we should," Ryan began, but his words were cut short as something barreled toward them from the shadows. A blur of movement knocked Ethan off his feet. The flashlight flew from his hand, landing a few feet away. Ryan swung the bat wildly, but the creature was too fast. It vanished into the corn as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only the sound of their ragged breaths. Ethan scrambled to his feet, grabbing the flashlight. "Did you see it?" "No," Ryan panted. "But it was big. Too big to be any animal I know." Their fear was palpable as they retreated to the edge of the field. Back in town, they shared their experience with Sheriff Mitchell, a grizzled man with a skeptical disposition. "Boys, I've been patrolling these fields for 20 years, Mitchell said, leaning back in his creaky office chair. "And I've never seen anything that couldn't be explained." "But what about Nathaniel?" Ethan pressed. "And the dog? Something is out there." Mitchell sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, I'll send a couple of deputies to check it out. But you two need to stay out of those fields. It's not safe." Ethan and Ryan knew the sheriff wouldn't take them seriously. Undeterred, they decided to investigate further on their own. Ethan spent hours combing through old town records and newspaper archives, searching for any mention of strange occurrences in the cornfields. What he found sent a chill down his spine. Decades ago, during the construction of the nearby dam, workers reported hearing strange noises coming from the fields. Livestock went missing, and several workers claimed to have seen a shadowy figure lurking among the corn. The incidents were dismissed as superstition, but the workers refused to enter the fields after dark. Ethan shared his findings with Ryan, who was less than thrilled. "So what? We're dealing with a ghost? A monster?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "But there's something in those fields, and I'm going to find out what it is." That night they returned to the fields, this time better prepared. Ethan carried a high-powered flashlight and a camera, while Ryan brought a crowbar. The air was thick with tension as they ventured deeper into the corn. They followed the strange noises until they stumbled upon an old, dilapidated wooden cabin hidden among the stalks. The door creaked ominously as they pushed it open. Inside they found a crude living space. A cot, a table littered with empty cans and a makeshift fire pit. "Someone's been living here," Ethan whispered, snapping photos. Ryan pointed to the corner where a pile of animal bones lay. "And not living alone, apparently." A low growl rumbled from outside, freezing them in place. They exchanged a glance before bolting for the door, but it was too late. The creature was upon them, its glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. "If you're still watching, make sure to hit that subscribe button." The creature lunged and the screen went black. The darkness of the cornfield seemed alive, a suffocating presence that wrapped itself around Ethan and Ryan as they scrambled to escape the creature. Its guttural growls echoed behind them, spurring them forward. Ethan's flashlight flickered, its beam barely piercing through the towering stalks. "We're not going to outrun it," Ryan shouted, his voice hoarse with panic. "This way," Ethan yelled, veering sharply to the left. He remembered the dilapidated cabin they'd stumbled upon earlier. It wasn't much, but it was their only hope for cover. They burst through the cabin door, slamming it shut behind them. Ryan shoved the rickety table against the door for reinforcement while Ethan scanned the room for anything they could use as a weapon. The creature slammed against the door, the force nearly knocking it off its hinges. "Whatever this thing is, it's not stopping," Ryan cried, gripping his crowbar tightly. Ethan's eyes landed on an old shotgun mounted on the wall. He pulled it down and checked the chamber. 2 shells. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. The creature let out an ear-piercing screech, followed by the sound of claws raking against the wooden door. Ethan aimed the shotgun at the door while Ryan braced himself for a fight. "Come on, you ugly bastard," Ethan muttered under his breath. The creature didn't break through. Instead, the sound stopped abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. Ethan and Ryan exchanged nervous glances. "Do you think it's gone?" Ryan whispered. Ethan shook his head. "I don't know. But we can't stay here." They waited a few moments longer before cautiously opening the door. The cornfields were still, the air heavy with an unnatural quiet. They crept out of the cabin, the shotgun and crowbar at the ready. As they moved through the field, Ethan noticed something strange. A trail of flattened stalks leading deeper into the corn. Against Ryan's protests, he decided to follow it. "This is a bad idea," Ryan muttered, gripping his crowbar like a lifeline. The trail led them to a clearing, where they found a large circular patch of dead corn. At the center was a strange, jagged hole in the ground, its edges blackened as if scorched by fire. "What the hell is this?" Ethan murmured, kneeling to examine the hole. Ryan kept his distance, his instincts screaming at him to leave. "Ethan, we need to go. Now." Ethan ignored him, his curiosity outweighing his fear. He shone his flashlight into the hole, revealing a network of tunnels carved into the earth. The walls were lined with claw marks and the air reeked of decay. "This is where it's coming from," Ethan said, his voice tinged with awe and dread. Ryan grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "And this is where we leave. Whatever's down there, we're not equipped to deal with it." Ethan reluctantly agreed, and they began their journey back to town. But as they neared the edge of the fields, they realized they weren't alone. The creature was stalking them, its glowing eyes visible between the stalks. "Run!" Ethan shouted, and they sprinted toward the safety of the road. They barely made it out alive, collapsing onto the pavement as the creature stopped at the edge of the fields, its hulking form silhouetted against the moonlight. It let out a menacing growl before retreating into the corn. The investigation deepens. Back in town, Ethan and Ryan shared their discovery with Sheriff Mitchell, but their story was met with skepticism. "A hole in the ground and some claw marks?" Mitchell scoffed. "Sounds like a badger or maybe a mountain lion." "It's not a badger," Ethan snapped. "We saw it. This thing is huge and it's smart." Mitchell sighed, clearly unconvinced. "I'll send someone to check it out. In the meantime, you two stay out of those fields." "That's an order." Frustrated but undeterred, Ethan decided to dig deeper into the town's history. He spent hours poring over old maps and documents, searching for any clue about the strange hole in the cornfields. What he found was chilling. The area where the hole was located had once been the site of a Native American settlement. According to legend, the tribe had encountered a creature they called the Shadow Eater, a beast that emerged from the earth to feed on the living. They had sealed it underground, warning future generations never to disturb its resting place. Ethan shared his findings with Ryan, who was visibly shaken. "So what? That thing is some kind of ancient monster?" Ryan asked, pacing nervously. "I don't know what it is," Ethan admitted. "But if the legends are true, we might have accidentally unsealed it." Ryan groaned, running a hand through his hair. "Great. Just great. How do we seal it back?" Ethan didn't have an answer. Descent into the abyss. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan and Ryan returned to the cornfields the following night, this time armed with better equipment. Ropes, flashlights, and a makeshift flamethrower Ryan had rigged using a propane tank and a lighter. "This is insane," Ryan muttered as they approached the hole. "Maybe," Ethan said, his resolve unwavering. "But if we don't stop this thing, who will?" They descended into the hole, the tunnels twisting and turning like the arteries of some great beast. The air grew colder the deeper they went, and the walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own. As they ventured further, they found more evidence of the creature's existence. Bones, shredded clothing, and strange symbols etched into the walls. "This is it," Ethan whispered. "This is where it lives." Before Ryan could respond, the creature attacked. It emerged from the shadows with a deafening roar, its massive form illuminated by the flickering light of their flamethrower. "Light it up!" Ethan yelled, and Ryan unleashed a torrent of fire. The creature screeched, retreating into the darkness, but they knew it wasn't defeated. They pressed on, determined to find its lair and put an end to the nightmare. Ethan and Ryan trudged deeper into the tunnels, the oppressive air thickening with every step. The walls seemed alive, pulsating faintly as if the earth itself breathed. The faint echoes of dripping water were the only sounds aside from their own cautious movements. Ryan gripped the flamethrower tightly, his knuckles white. "This is a mistake," he muttered, glancing over his shoulder at Ethan. "We should have brought backup or, better yet, just left this thing alone." Ethan pressed on, his flashlight scanning the strange symbols carved into the walls. "And let it keep terrorizing the town? No way. If we don't do something, no one will." They came across a wider chamber, the floor littered with bones and scraps of what looked like animal carcasses, and human remains. Ryan gagged, covering his mouth. "What the hell is this thing eating?" he asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted an answer. Ethan crouched beside a set of markings on the ground, tracing them with his fingers. "These symbols, they're different. Almost like a warning." Ryan's voice trembled. "Maybe it's warning us to turn back before we end up like those poor bastards." A deep, guttural growl echoed through the chamber, freezing them both in place. Ethan and Ryan turned slowly, their flashlights catching a glint of movement in the shadows. The creature was there, watching, waiting. Ethan whispered, "Don't make any sudden moves." The creature stepped forward, revealing itself fully. Its elongated limbs and jagged claws glistened in the dim light, its eyes glowing with an unnatural yellow hue. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth that dripped with saliva. Ryan took a step back, his foot crunching on a bone. The sound was enough to provoke the creature. It lunged at them with terrifying speed, letting out a roar that reverberated through the chamber. Ethan fired his shotgun, the blast echoing in the confined space. The creature recoiled but didn't go down. Ryan aimed the flamethrower and unleashed a stream of fire, driving the beast back further. "It's not enough," Ryan shouted. "This thing's not going down. We need to trap it," Ethan yelled, scanning the room for anything they could use. His eyes landed on a jagged fissure in the ceiling, where loose rocks hung precariously. "Over there," Ethan pointed. "Get it under that fissure." Ryan hesitated but nodded, understanding the plan. He waved the flamethrower, taunting the creature. "Come on, you ugly freak. Over here." The creature snarled and charged at Ryan, who led it toward the fissure. Ethan grabbed a nearby rock and hurled it at the weak ceiling, dislodging a cascade of debris. The rocks fell, crashing down onto the creature and pinning it to the ground. For a moment there was silence. Ethan and Ryan stood frozen, their chests heaving as they stared at the mound of rubble. "Did we get it?" Ryan asked, his voice shaky. Before Ethan could answer, the rubble shifted. The creature clawed its way out, battered but far from defeated. Its rage-filled roar echoed through the chamber as it lashed out, striking Ethan and sending him flying into the wall. Ryan screamed, unleashing the flamethrower again. The fire engulfed the creature, and this time, it let out a blood-curdling shriek, retreating into the tunnels. Ethan groaned, clutching his side as he struggled to stand. "We need to finish this," he said through gritted teeth. Ryan helped him up. "How?" "That thing just shrugged off a rock slide and fire like it was nothing." "There has to be something we're missing," Ethan said, his mind racing. "The symbols, the legends, there's a reason it was sealed down here. Maybe we can trap it again." They followed the creature's trail, the tunnel narrowing as it led them deeper underground. The air grew colder and a faint, unnatural hum filled the space. Eventually they entered a massive cavern, its walls covered in the same ancient symbols. At the center of the cavern was a large stone pedestal, surrounded by strange artifacts and what looked like ceremonial tools. "This must be it," Ethan said, examining the pedestal. "This is where it was sealed." Ryan looked around nervously. "Great. How do we seal it again?" Ethan studied the artifacts, his eyes landing on a peculiar dagger with a jagged, obsidian blade. "This," he said, picking it up. "This has to be the key." Before Ryan could respond, the creature burst into the cavern, its rage palpable. It charged at them, its claws slashing through the air. Ethan yelled, "Keep it distracted." Ryan did his best, dodging the creature's attacks and using the flamethrower to keep it at bay. Meanwhile, Ethan examined the pedestal, searching for a way to activate it. He noticed a series of indentations that matched the shape of the dagger. Come on," Ethan muttered as he placed the dagger into the slot. The ground trembled, and the symbols on the walls began to glow with an eerie light. The creature howled, its movements becoming frantic as if it sensed what was happening. It turned its attention to Ethan, charging at him with murderous intent. Ryan tackled it from the side, knocking it off course. "Do it now," he screamed. Ethan twisted the dagger, and the light intensified. A deafening roar filled the cavern as the ground opened up beneath the creature, pulling it into a swirling vortex of light and shadow. The creature thrashed and screamed, its claws scraping against the stone as it was dragged into the abyss. The vortex closed with a thunderous boom, leaving the cavern eerily silent. Ethan and Ryan collapsed to the ground, their bodies aching and their minds reeling. "Is it over?" Ryan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded, staring at the now inactive pedestal. "I think so." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what they had just survived sinking in. Finally, Ryan let out a shaky laugh. "I'm never going into a cornfield again," he said. Ethan chuckled weakly. "Yeah, same." Together, they made their way out of the tunnels, the faint light of dawn guiding them back to the surface. Ethan and Ryan emerged from the tunnels, their breaths ragged as the early morning sun bathed the landscape in pale light. The fresh air was a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness they had just escaped. For a moment they stood in silence, taking in the serenity of the world above. "It's gone, right?" Ryan asked, breaking the quiet. "For good this time?" Ethan hesitated, his gaze drifting back toward the tunnel entrance. "I think so. But something about all this doesn't sit right with me. The dagger, the symbols, someone put a lot of effort into sealing that thing away. Why didn't they destroy it?" Ryan frowned, his nerves still frayed. Maybe they couldn't. Or maybe they didn't want to. The idea sent a chill down Ethan's spine. He shook his head, forcing himself to focus. We need to make sure this place is sealed off. No one else should ever stumble into this. As they began gathering materials to block the entrance, a low rumble echoed from deep within the ground. The vibrations were faint but unmistakable. Ethan and Ryan froze, their eyes meeting in alarm. Tell me that's just an aftershock, Ryan said, his voice barely steady. Ethan didn't reply. Instead, he crouched and pressed his hand to the ground, feeling the subtle tremors beneath. His face paled. It's not over. Before they could react, the earth beneath their feet shifted violently. The tunnel entrance collapsed with a deafening roar, sending a cloud of dust into the air. Ethan and Ryan stumbled back, coughing and shielding their faces. When the dust settled, the entrance was completely buried. But the faint rumble persisted, growing stronger with each passing moment. Ethan, Ryan said, his voice trembling. What if we didn't seal it in? What if we just pissed it off? Ethan's mind raced as he tried to process the implications. Then we need help. Real help. This is way beyond us now. They hurried back to the truck, their adrenaline propelling them forward. As they drove toward town, the radio crackled to life with an emergency broadcast. This is a public safety alert, the announcer said, his voice urgent. Residents in the surrounding areas are advised to stay indoors and avoid open fields. Reports of seismic activity and unexplained animal attacks have been confirmed. Authorities are investigating. Ryan gripped the steering wheel tightly. Unexplained animal attacks? That thing's not just in the tunnels anymore. Ethan nodded grimly. We let it out. And now it's hunting. They arrived at the local police station, bursting in and demanding to see the sheriff. Sheriff Blake, a grizzled veteran with a stern demeanor, listened skeptically as Ethan and Ryan recounted their ordeal. You're telling me a monster came out of a cornfield, chased you through underground tunnels, and now it's out terrorizing the town? Blake asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, Ethan said, his tone firm. I know how it sounds, but you've seen the reports. The attacks, the seismic activity, it's all connected. Blake sighed, rubbing his temples. Even if I believed you, what do you expect me to do? Call in the National Guard to fight some cornfield demon? Ryan slammed his hand on the desk. People are going to die if we don't do something. Blake studied them for a moment, then picked up his radio. All right. I'll send a team to investigate the area. But if this turns out to be some prank, you two are going to wish you'd stayed in those tunnels. As the sheriff's deputies mobilized, Ethan and Ryan followed closely, determined to help despite their exhaustion. The convoy of vehicles rumbled toward the edge of town, where reports of disturbances had been most frequent. When they arrived, the scene was chaotic. Farmhouses were destroyed, fields were torn apart, and the air was thick with the scent of scorched earth. Survivors huddled together, their faces etched with fear. Ethan approached one of the farmers, an older man clutching a rifle. What happened here? The man's hands shook as he pointed toward the horizon. It came out of nowhere. Big as a house. Took down my barn in one swipe. I shot at it, but bullets didn't do a damn thing. Ryan looked at Ethan, his expression grim. We need a plan fast. Ethan turned to Sheriff Blake. We can't fight this thing head on. We need to trap it again like before. But we'll need everyone's help. Blake hesitated, then nodded. All right. What do you need? Ethan quickly outlined a plan. They would lure the creature into an open field where they could use explosives to weaken it and force it into a makeshift containment pit. It was risky, but it was their only chance. The townspeople worked together, rigging the field with explosives and setting up barricades to funnel the creature into the trap. As night fell, the tension was palpable. Everyone took their positions, weapons at the ready. The rumbling returned, louder and more violent than before. The ground shook as the creature emerged from the shadows, its monstrous form illuminated by the headlights of the vehicles. Ethan and Ryan stood at the forefront, their resolve unshaken despite their fear. Let's do this, Ethan said, gripping his shotgun. The creature roared, its yellow eyes blazing as it charged toward them. Ethan fired a shot, hitting it square in the chest. The creature staggered but didn't slow down. The others joined in, unloading their weapons as the creature barreled toward the trap. Ryan shouted, "Now! Blow it!" The explosives detonated, engulfing the creature in a massive explosion. The ground shook violently as the pit caved in, swallowing the beast. When the dust settled, the townspeople approached cautiously, peering into the pit. The creature was gone, its monstrous form buried beneath tons of rubble. Ethan and Ryan collapsed to the ground, their bodies and minds utterly spent. "It's over," Ethan said, his voice barely audible. "For real this time," Ryan added, managing a weak smile. The townspeople erupted into cheers, their relief palpable. Sheriff Blake approached Ethan and Ryan, offering a rare smile. "You two did good. Damn good." Ethan nodded, his gaze distant. "Let's just hope it stays buried this time." As dawn broke, the town began to rebuild, united by their shared ordeal. But deep beneath the rubble, something stirred.